Hi friends! I'm Emily, this is Ink Not Blood, and welcome to Book Buzz. Oh, I'm supposed to be wearing this shirt. Hold on. Here we go. Hi friends! I'm Emily, this is Ink Not Blood, and welcome to Book Buzz, a series of videos where I review books and I call it Book Buzz because reasons. Today I'll be giving you my spoiler-free review of Slayer by Kiersten White, which was released on January 8th, 2019. I looked forward to this book for so long. I pre-ordered it, and on the day it was released, I went to the bookstore and picked it up as soon as I could. If you haven't seen it already, I did do a short vlog of that day, so you should go check that out. Thanks to my older sister, who has taught me everything I know, I've been obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer for a very long time. I'm even dressed appropriately, wearing my train like you live on the Hellmouth tank top. I've seen the TV series multiple times, I'm reading the comics, I obviously own Buffy paraphernalia, I listen to Buffy podcasts. What? Don't be jealous just because my fandom's better than yours. I even named my Sonora Desert Boa Rupert Ripper Giles, after everyone's favorite watcher slash librarian slash tweed-wearing Brit. I got to meet Kiersten White at BookCon last year to get a signed chapter sampler of Slayer and tell her how excited I was for her to take on the Buffyverse. So with all of that anticipation, was Slayer everything I dreamed of, or was it a disappointment? Honestly, for me, it fell somewhere in the middle. But overall, I really did love it, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. The protagonist of Slayer is Athena, or Nina for short. She and her twin sister have grown up in a family of watchers, and they've seen a great deal of tragedy, especially recently when the actions of the infamous Buffy led to the destruction of all magic. But something's not right with Nina, who's usually just existed in the background. On the day magic died, she felt something change inside her. Turns out, Nina, the girl who has hated Slayers and everything they stand for, is a Slayer herself. Nina spends the rest of the book trying to figure out what that means for her and for the people around her, all the while tackling the question of what the hell really is a Slayer anyway? There were lots of things this book did right. First of all, I think White captures the humor of the original Buffy series very well. She clearly has an ear for it, and I found myself laughing out loud while reading, really hearing the lines in my head as if they were being spoken by Buffy or Willow. I also thought that the choice of protagonist made for a really interesting story. Nina is the resident medic. She's a healer, not a fighter. In fact, she despises the Slayers and the destruction they represent. In the book, she's often complaining about how much emphasis is put on violence and how healing doesn't seem to be valued as much. I love stories where the protagonist is wrestling with something new about themselves, a new role or a new identity, and it makes them have to think really hard about who they are and what that means. Nina feels torn between who she thought she was, who she knows herself to be, and who she feels she's supposed to be because she's now a Slayer. And the book follows her through this journey as she navigates those issues and finds for herself where it is she stands. But there were some things about this book that didn't work for me, or just bummed me out. First of all, there needed to be more vampires.
More vampires!
I did like that we were introduced to a lot of cool new demons with interesting abilities, but vampires are the backbone of the Buffyverse, and there weren't nearly enough of them in this book. Maybe White passed them up because they seemed too obvious? But you know, sometimes obvious is good. Sometimes you want the obvious, because it's what's supposed to be there. I would have loved to see more vampires causing trouble and getting into fights throughout this book. There were also a few occurrences in the book that I thought were just too convenient to be believable. For one thing, Nina has her new Slayer powers for 2 months before she figures out what's going on. Given what's already been established in the Buffyverse regarding Slayer powers, and the way they're portrayed throughout the rest of the book, it seemed really silly that nobody noticed that she was suddenly superhuman. She didn't even notice it herself. It's like she knew something was weird, but she wasn't sure, plus she was in denial, and I get that. But when the line of work you've been surrounded with revolves around Slayers, how is that not the first thing you think of? How are you not like, oh, you know what? I'm probably a Slayer. There were also a handful of conflicts and reveals that really only existed because characters weren't talking to each other. That's a big pet peeve of mine, especially when there's ample opportunity for those characters to be talking to each other and they just don't. Like if there's a moment where you can get that information from the other person and it makes sense in the context of their relationship, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't they just talk to each other? Despite its flaws, I gave Slayer a solid 4 stars. I really do think it's a great start to the series. And it was so much fun to dive back into the Buffyverse and explore a whole new corner of it. Can I also just take a second to talk about how cool it is that Kiersten White got tapped to write this series? I mean, wow! I know she's a big fan, and that must have been just crazy for her. What do I have to do to get tapped to write a series in the Buffyverse? Oh, what? Like actually publish a book? I'm working on it, okay? Anyway, that's all for this episode of Book Buzz. I'll see you next time.